Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and uncover the surprising knowledge hidden within.
Today, we're taking a close look at something, well, most of us experience as kids,
Yeah.
losing a tooth, and the whole fascinating mystery uh, of the tooth fairy.
We're diving into excerpts from Barbara Park's book, Junie B, First Grader, Toothless Wonder, and our mission here is to unpack this specific account, see what it tells us about how children navigate big physical changes, how they wrestle with folklore, and how they try to make logical sense of their world.
It's a really insightful look, actually, at a universal childhood milestone, but from a very, very distinct perspective.
Yeah.
Let's see what insights we can pull from this source material.
Okay, so Junie B's story kicks off right with her experiencing the physical reality of a loose tooth specifically, a top front one.
Yeah.
She's actively trying to get it out, even getting a bit frustrated with it, like calling it a dumb bunny tooth.
Right. And almost immediately, this physical thing creates social ripples, doesn't it? It leads to that little argument with May, and they both end up getting told off by Mr. Scary. But you also see that flash of her personality, her insistence on being called Junie B.
Oh, yeah.
It's like even a wobbly tooth can't quite overshadow her sense of self.
That insistence on it's such a signature Junie B thing. But then Mr. Scary notices the tooth, right? And his reaction seems to, totally reframe it for her.
It does. He calls it loosey-goosey,
Yeah.
notes it's a top tooth, and then says, losing that one is actually the best because it makes your smile really cute.
Right, and you'll start looking like a big kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it transforms it from just discomfort into something kind of positive, a sign of growing up, maybe even something that makes her look good.
And because it's now this positive marker, she immediately zooms in on being the first one in room one to lose a top front tooth.
Mm-hmm.
And to her, being first means she's the winner, and winners, well, they get a prize.
It's that classic kid logic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just mapping familiar ideas like contests and prizes onto something totally natural, biological.
Yeah.
But Mr. Scary, he kind of shrugs off the prize idea, says there aren't any, but he offers her something else instead. A shiny star cut from silver paper to wear.
And her initial reaction to that star is pretty funny. She doesn't think it's his best work.
Uh-huh.
But then she kind of pivots and decides it looks prettier. What does that shift kind of tell us about how kids process maybe disappointment or unexpected things?
Well, it shows that flexibility, I think, that ability kids have to recalibrate expectations. The prize wasn't what she wanted, no, but this shiny star, it becomes this visible symbol of her situation, a different kind of marker that she can accept and eventually even appreciate.
Okay, so recess. That brings more external reactions, some good, some maybe a bit anxious making. Classmates want to see the tooth, saying she'll look cool.
Like a hockey player or a kickboxer, which are interesting associations.
Kind of aggressive ones, maybe.
Yeah, but then Sheldon drops the real bomb, the fear of looking like his toothless Uncle Lou, who lost his teeth because he'd never brushed.
Oh,
And that image that seems to instantly just, poof, wipe out all the potential coolness.
that fear makes her feel sick and very glum. It's not just about the gap, is it? It's about her identity.
Exactly. The fear is looking like a freako, not looking like herself anymore. She worries her friend Herb won't recognize her. And then there's that truly dramatic kid fear of being ridiculed.
Oh, yeah, the circle and the fruit throwing.
Classmates forming a circle and throwing fruit at her. It really highlights how these physical changes, even normal ones like losing a tooth, can tap into these really deep-seated childhood anxieties about fitting in, about being accepted, all filtered through that wonderfully imaginative, sometimes terrifying first grader lens.
It really does escalate super fast in her mind. And right when she's worrying about Uncle Lou, Herb tries to cheer her up. He mentions the bright side,
Right. Getting money from the tooth fairy.
which you'd think would be a good distraction, right? But for Junie B, mentioning the tooth fairy brings on chill bumps and flutterflies.
Yeah, she calls it a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
But we don't know why yet. She doesn't explain why it's unsettling.
So the potential payoff, the money, it's overshadowed by some unknown fear or maybe just confusion about the tooth fairy herself. And then we get this complete change of pace, a school presentation, Miss Chris talking about recycling.
And this recycling story, the one about Dan the soda can, it becomes surprisingly important later on.
Mm-hmm.
Dan gets littered, gets dented, but then he's taken to a recycling center, fixed up good as new, and becomes Dan the orange juice can. It's presented as this kind of miracle of transformation and reuse.
And the slogan's even on stickers. Recycling makes sense, with the play on words, sense.
Right, so you've got this concept floating around now. something old and discarded being given new purpose, new value.
Okay.
And you see Junie B's mind working. She's still focused on not losing her tooth, wishing she wasn't the first one. And since she can't control the other kids, she figures the only way to avoid these bad outcomes she's imagining is to, well, stop the process herself.
How? By just not wiggling it anymore.
Exactly. She's convinced it'll just get tight in her mouth again if she leaves it alone.
It's such a kid thing, trying to stop something inevitable through sheer willpower. The desire for control when things feel scary or uncertain.
But, biology wins. The tooth comes out while she's with Grandpa Miller, and it happens almost by accident. He wiggles it without even asking.
Well,
She instinctively bites down on his finger ouch, and pop, the tooth comes out when she bites.
and her reaction is just pure Junie B drama.
Totally. Running around shouting that Grandpa knocked it out, screaming about looking like Uncle Lou, trying to call 911.
Oh my God.
Then comes the bathroom scene, seeing blood mixed with the spit in the water. That triggers a whole new panic.
Right, blood.
Blood, and the fear she's almost out of blood. Meanwhile, you get that little grown-up detail, Grandpa taking an aspirin and Tums, probably from the finger bite, maybe the stress.
Huh, that's a nice touch. But for Junie B, the immediate terror is the blood, and then right after, the fear of actually looking in the mirror.
Mm. And her first reaction when she does look is
Yeah.
harsh. She calls herself a freako, says, "I hate me. I'm never going to look at myself again."
Wow, that's intense.
It's a really powerful picture of that initial shock, that negative self-image, the physical change triggers. But Grandpa, he gently encourages her to look again. He tells her she looks cute, wonderful.
And that external reassurance may be combined with just looking longer. It seems to shift her perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. She peeks, she tries making different faces in the mirror,
Yeah.
and her language completely changes. She decides she looks fascinating.
Fascinating. What does that transformation, that word choice, tell us?
It's huge, I think. It shows the power of acceptance, finding a new way to see yourself. The initial fear, the self-rejection, it gives way to curiosity, even a kind of pride in her new look.
Mm.
Fascinating is so much more active, more positive than freako.
Okay, so the tooth is out. She's now accepted her fascinating new look. And the family marks the occasion with festivities. There's even a cake with a missing tooth drawn on it.
Right. And she's fully embraced the tooth itself now. She calls it a beaut and wants to take it to school for show and tell, like it's a trophy.
Which her parents immediately veto. Definitely not a good idea. Disgusting, basically.
But Junie B, ever the little lawyer, she counters with examples of other weird stuff kids brought in, like a shark's tooth,
Okay.
or even her own grandmother's dentures that kids apparently put in their mouths,
Mm-hmm.
which understandably makes Grandma Miller do a little gag.
Oh, gosh. And then Grandpa whispers that joke about being glad she doesn't want to bring the spit cup.
Bad move.
Mm.
Because Junie B, with her ears like a hawk, hears him,
Of course she does.
and she enthusiastically jumps on that idea,
Yeah.
suggesting she could show the blood around the edges.
Mm.
And that apparently kills the party vibe.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a perfect example of that kid literalism, the lack of a social filter. But this whole discussion about the tooth, what to do with it, it brings us back to that unresolved issue, that can of worms.
The tooth fairy.
Right. She's expected to put the tooth under her pillow, and those Joe bumps come right back.
This is where she finally spills the beans about the truth she heard from Polly Allen Puffer's brother.
Ah, okay. What's the truth?
The tooth fairy isn't a fairy. Nope. She's a teensy little tooth witch.
A tooth witch.
Yep. And the lore is very specific. She flies on a teensy little toothbrush, takes the tooth, and get this chomped a big bite out of it, like it's a little tooth apple.
Boo.
Exactly. And the money, that's just a cover-up. A trick so kids will leave their teeth out for her to chomp. Mother's reaction running out of the room kind of tells you how unsettling this version is.
Yeah, no kidding. Daddy tries to debunk it, though, right? Says the brother is full of soup, just making stuff up to scare her.
He does. But Junie B, she finds the witch theory more convincing. She actually argues it makes way more sense than a fairy,
Why? Why would a witch make more sense?
because the witch likes to chomp the teeth. That gives her a clear, if kind of creepy purpose, a motivation for wanting the teeth in the first place.
Ah, I see.
A fairy who apparently does nothing with the teeth at all
Oh.
just doesn't add up logically for Junie B. She needs a reason why.
She's looking for the motive, the logic behind the collection. Mother tries to offer a different, less chompy purpose, right? Making jewelry.
Yeah, using teeth to make jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, even toe rings.
Where it sounds...
Repulsive. That's the word both Junie B and Daddy use.
Okay, yeah. And this is a really key point. Because none of the grown-up explanations give a purpose for the teeth that makes sense to Junie B. She refuses to leave the tooth under her pillow for several nights.
Right. The fairy, without a clear motivation that clicks for her, still did not make sense.
It really highlights that for her, the magic itself isn't the problem. It's the lack of logic within the magic. She needs a reason for the whole transaction.
Exactly. So what does she do? She goes to school, but instead of the tooth, she brings the spit cup.
Oh dear. The spit cup again.
Yep. And she's eager to show off her fascinating gap-toothed smile to Herb on the bus. He reacts okay to the smile.
But maybe less so to the spit cup.
You got it. Not delighted. Herb, though, he brings up the next logical step, the tooth fairy money.
Mm.
But Junie B's all mysterious about it.
How so?
She says she can't even discuss that matter, that she knows stuff, and basically just repeats that the fairy doesn't make sense.
And this actually gets Herb thinking, doesn't it?
It does. He finds her main question, what does the fairy do with the teeth, to be a real stumper? It's like something he just accepted, but now that she's questioned it, he sees the gap in the story too.
Interesting. So at school, most reactions to her missing tooth are actually positive now. Compliments from Lenny, Jose, Mr. Scary gives her a sticker.
Right. May is still May, of course, calling her smile weird and silly.
But Junie B just makes a silly face back. She seems less bothered by May now that she sort of owned her new look.
Yeah, she seems more confident.
Mm.
And putting a raisin in her tooth hole at lunch, that's a great little detail, showing her finding humor and playfulness in it. She's actively engaging with the change now.
But the tooth fairy question inevitably comes up again when the other kids ask about the money. And this time, Junie B shares her issues more openly. The core problem: nobody knows what the fairy actually does with all those teeth.
And May, even though she calls it a dumb issue, she doesn't have an answer either. The whole class is stumped.
So it wasn't just Junie B's private little hang-up. It's a collective gap in the folklore's logic, at least for them.
Exactly. Nobody knew what she did with the teeth. Then the seal pipes up with a possibility. Maybe the fairy just collects them, like a hobby.
A hobby like collecting stamps?
Sort of. She compares it to her Richie Nana, who collects tons of junk and pays for it. And this idea, the collecting idea, it resonates with the other kid.
Why? Because they collect stuff too.
Precisely. Baseball cards, Matchbox cars, even, hilariously, vacuum cleaner bags, according to Sheldon.
Vacuum cleaner bags, okay?
So this makes the collecting theory plausible, because it's a concept they understand from their own lives. It provides a collective, understandable purpose, even if it's just accumulation for its own sake.
So with this new, more logical, well, logical to them possibility, Junie B is finally willing to try leaving the tooth under her pillow.
She is. Though she's still a little nervous about the potential witch, asking Mother to put the tooth close to the edge of the pillow, wanting the light on, the door open.
And Mother's reaction is just classic parental exhaustion, right? Whatever, I give up.
Oh yeah, a moment many parents probably recognize. But despite the lingering fear, Junie B does it.
Yeah.
And the next morning, she wakes up. She made it through the night.
Yeah.
And she finds cash under her pillow. Big excitement. Cash, cash, I got cash. The mystery seems solved. She got the money. End of story, right?
But then comes the twist, the pivotal moment, this crucial coincidence.
Exactly. That very same morning, her baby brother Ollie got his very first tooth.
Ah, okay, I see where this might be going.
Right. She feels his new little tooth bud in his gum, and it triggers this loud gasp, this huge, that's it, moment of realization.
She connects the dots, but how?
Using that other piece of information she learned recently recycling, her theory just explodes out of her. The fairy recycled. She recycled my baby tooth, and she gave it to Ollie.
Wow. She actually links it back to the Dan the soda can story.
Explicitly. Her tooth was taken, presumably processed somehow, made shiny and new, and then given to her baby brother as his new tooth. She feels Ollie's gum again and is utterly convinced. I'd know that tooth anywhere.
How did the parents react to this unique theory?
They're surprised, kind of amused maybe. They say, well, I'll be. And what a great idea. A generous interpretation, perhaps?
Perhaps. But for Junie B, this is the absolute breakthrough. The tooth fairy finally makes sense.
Yes. The tooth fairy doesn't just throw teeth in the garbage, she realizes. Now, I know that for sure. It provides that missing piece.
And she even brings back the slogan from the recycling presentation.
She does. Recycling makes sense, because sense sounds like sense. The two totally separate concepts have clicked together perfectly in her mind, creating this beautifully logical framework for the tooth fairy's actions.
She must be thrilled.
Oh, totally. She can't wait to share her revolutionary tooth fairy recycling theory with everyone in room one.
And the story ends with her feeling Ollie's recycled tooth again.
hmm And deciding, based on this newfound connection, this shared tooth experience, that she might like that boy after all. It's the ultimate integration, bringing together the physical change, the social aspects, the folklore, and her own logical construction.
Wow. So yeah, it wasn't just about losing a tooth at all, was it? It was this whole journey of processing a physical change, questioning accepted stories, and actively building meaning based on whatever new information came her way.
Absolutely. This deep dive really shows us how a child doesn't just passively accept folklore.
Mhm.
Junie B actively grapples with that tooth fairy narrative. She questions its purpose. She demands a logical explanation for why teeth are collected.
And she finds that logic by linking it to something completely separate she learned at school: recycling. Finding that purpose for the teeth was the absolute key to making the fairy make sense to her, whether that purpose was, chomping.
Right. Or collecting, or making jewelry, or ultimately recycling.
Yeah, each theory was an attempt to provide that missing piece of why. The witch gave a creepy why, the jewelry a repulsive why, the collector a relatable why.
Exactly. And finally, recycling provided the most satisfying functional why for Junie B, connecting it to this positive concept of reuse and value.
So what does this all mean for you listening? I think this deep dive into what seems like a simple children's story reveals something pretty fundamental about us humans that need to find purpose, to create logical connections, even when we're faced with mystery or things that seem kind of irrational.
It raises an interesting question, doesn't it? How often do we maybe overlook potential connections between different bits of information in our own lives? What unexpected insights might pop up if you started linking seemingly unrelated concepts together, the way Junie B connected recycling to the tooth fairy? What other myths or common assumptions might suddenly have surprising explanations if you just look at them through a slightly different lens?